completely different lifestyles. I mean, consider animals for a second. You wouldn't build an aquarium, throw a monkey in it, and be surprised that it is happy. An aquarium is just too different from a monkey's natural habitat. Similarly, most types of bacteria cannot grow a nutritional jello in a petri dish because it's just too different from their natural environment. For example, these bacteria grow in marine sediment where the bottom layer has sulfur, no oxygen, and the top layer has oxygen, no sulfur. So its food is at the bottom and its air is at the top. These bacteria form a vertical Congo line where the top one breathes and the bottom one eats. Then they exchange energy in the form of literal electricity. The flat horizontal surface of petri dish jello doesn't allow them to do the things they need to survive. Some bacteria, like Vibrio fischeri, are really good friends with other organisms. They grow in the light-producing organs of the bobtail squid. It's so cute! The luminescent bacteria help the squid camouflage itself. If you want to study these friendships in the lab, it's actually very squid grow together with these bacteria. And some bacteria are parasites that will only grow within living animal cells, but not in a friendly way. This is the case for the bacteria that causes syphilis. Putting a bacteria on a plate of jello is like feeding them candy bars, which does work for some species, but other species, like syphilis, are pickier. They need a constant supply of fresh nutrients like you can only get inside a host cell. And some bacteria grow in environments that we can't replicate because we still don't know enough about them. All organisms need something from their environment, like how the bacteria that live in thermal vents need a ton of heat, while others need high amounts of salt, and still others need blood. These things aren't difficult to provide in petri dishes. The key is knowing what the little bugs need, which can create a catch-22 situation. We can't figure out what it is that the bacteria specifically needs to grow because we can't study it, because we simply don't know how to grow it. Because of all these difficulties, the vast majority of what we know about bacteria comes from the easy-to-please E. coli that thrive in petri dishes, which have been a huge boon to microbial science. But at the same time, my mind boggles at the thought of all the species we don't know about simply because they don't grow on petri dishes. But lab techniques evolve, and we are now learning more about the world of bacteria by bringing the lab outside, or by bringing some of the outside world inside. One day, petri dishes might even become obsolete, but I will still love them. I mean, look at this jello. It's alive! I made this video in collaboration with the Center for Electromicrobiology at Aarhus University. Made it their mission to learn as much as they can about the table bacteria we mentioned in this video. Although you can see them with the naked eye, table bacteria were only discovered in 2012 in a town in Denmark when researchers plugged chemical sensors in the sea. Today, the Center for Electromicrobiology combines forces with geochemists, molecular biologists, physicists, and ecologists to find out all sorts of cool things about table bacteria, like how they make their own electric wires from proteins that could one day replace the toxic wires in our smartphones, or that their presence in a rice plantation can reduce its methane emissions by more than 90%. In other words, there are a bunch of reasons to keep on digging in the mud.
If I could only play one game for the rest of my life, it would be Super Mario Sunshine, and I'm not kidding. This 2002 GameCube title has experienced quite a roller coaster in critical reception. While it was initially praised and is currently riding an upswing in fond retrospectives due largely to the nostalgia cycle, for years and years, Sunshine was widely considered one of the, if not the, worst mainline Mario game. Looking back at the broader series, it certainly sticks out. From the replacement of some of Mario's moves with a talking water pump to the restrictive linearity of the level structure to certain indefensibly broken sections of the game, there is a lot to point at, even bad. And that's without mentioning the interesting voice acting. And yet, it persists as one of my favorite games of all time, one which I connect with deeply and effortlessly. The setting of Isle of Reno is beautifully realized with so much charm and attention to detail, and every little cranny is inscribed deep in the fingers of my brain, and it's well better than the back of my hands that have been game controller for the large majority of my life. As one might say, the vibes are on. So returning to Super Mario Sunshine as an adult, memories both emotional and muscle in hand, I find no trouble looking past the flaws that are undeniably present to the heart of this wonderful art. And to my surprise, I found depth in it. There are things to discover and ponder, a genuine story where the important message is being told just under the surface that usually goes unscratched. I think, anyway. Maybe I'm kidding myself. Maybe my own nostalgia is rose tinting my sunglasses, making me see too much value in something that has little. Let's find out. Welcome to Reconstructed. This is the sun-drenched tropical paradise of Isle Delphine, Super Mario Sunshine's remarkably memorable island setting. It's divided into 8 primary areas, including the hub of Delphine Plaza, which links them all together. While each location fits the tropical theme, the game still achieves impressive diversity in its stages, each having a distinct personality. From the warm and relaxing Gelato Beach to the high-energy workplace of Harbor to the serene and mysterious Narky Bay, Isle Delphine is rich with life. It is infinitely explorable. There is a sense that these areas are authentically lived in. They exist on their own rather than being Mario. And it's the visitors that are destroying the plot of this game is a touch more complex than the standard series. Mario and Peach are on a vacation that immediately goes south. They discover the cluster of the plumber, Shadow Mario, has slathered the island, feeding severe vandalism. Understandably, the residents of the island arrest the real Mario for these crimes and quickly sentence him to death by electric chair.
What? He'll be discharged!
No, he gets community service.
I hereby order the defendant to clean this entire island!
So, Mario's motivation here is not to rescue Princess Peach, but to detoxify this island and clear his name in the process. His instrument of cleaning is a talking water pump named Flood, short for Flash Liquidizer Ultra Dousing Device. Flood allows Mario to spray water in front of him, as well as hover in place for a short time, among a couple other techniques unlocked later. With his brand new moveset, Mario jumps between the various tropical locales, all of which are plagued by some form of pollution or invasive enemy interfering with their way of life. And all of the damage can be traced to that strange doppelganger. The reward for alleviating these problems are shine sprites, Isle Delphina's source of energy that were scattered and hidden as a result of the contamination. As you collect more and more shines, the island slowly regains its former glory and the lives of its inhabitants improve. But Nintendo couldn't help themselves, and somewhere in the mess, Peach does get kidnapped, once again, this time by Shadow Mario. This happens as soon as you collect 10 shines, so pretty early in any playthrough, and supersedes helping Isle Delphina as the apparent reason to progress through the story. Spoilers, I guess, for the next little bit. When you chase him down in Peanut Park, Shadow Mario reveals his true identity as Bowser's son. His motivation is that he believes Peach is actually his mother and is impersonating Mario to get him imprisoned. What? Girl, come on. This plotline is cute and simple, but doesn't attempt to be meaningful or intriguing, really. And all of this is set up in the first 2 hours, then left hanging with no further development until the very end of the game. What is far more interesting is the story that is communicated entirely without cutscenes and stilted dialogue. The true main character of Super Mario Sunshine is Isle Delphina itself. So, each major area has 8 discrete episodes, all with a shine at the end. These have to be played in order, which allows the level to evolve with every successive adventure. The general pattern is Mario cleaning up recurring issues with pollution and/or giant obstructed enemies before finally confronting Shadow Mario himself. For example, in Bianco Hills, the first place you explore, Mario begins by ridding the lake area of a mud-covered monster, then returns to beat the giant piranha plant occupying their windmill, then finally fixes the source of the water that was poisoning the lake itself. All of these challenges involve a steady mix of the platforming you would expect from Mario and spraying things down with your talking Super Soaker. The use of Flood is an unusual mechanic for the series, but functions to tether the player's actions to Mario's unusual mission. It's cathartic somehow. You always leave these areas cleaner and tidier than you found them, and pumping the water is how the player accomplishes that. While there is always an obvious primary objective to every episode, what drives the player to explore these areas is the sheer density of smaller objectives to be discovered, most notably the numerous blue coins. There are 240 of said coins dotting Isle Delfino's landscape, turning Sunshine into a bona fide collectathon. While some are hanging out in plain sight, most are collected by, again, cleaning the island, the most frequent hiding spots being behind pieces of graffiti or inside the various enemies. These countless secrets naturally encourage the player to be deeply familiar with each area. If you vibe with the blue coin system, you will rarely, if ever, make a direct line to the episode's shine, instead zigzagging all over the stage searching for little treasures. As a result, you subconsciously memorize every cliff, cave, and corner, all with clean, detail, and charm. These levels are their own worlds designed with a believable sense of history and respect for the modern reality of their inhabitants. You initially spend time in clearly touristy locations, but as you get farther in the game, you gain access to the original homelands of the native residents, the Piantas and Nokis. Noki Bay in particular is a standout area in both its presentation and its narrative. Nestled among towering mossy cliffs and dominated by sculptures made of colossal seashells, there is a unique and comforting aesthetic to this place. But upon arrival, it is in a sorry state. The cove's water is poisoned to the point of nearly all the Nokis having to flee their hometown, leaving only an old man and his son behind who are desperately trying to solve the problem. Mario attempts multiple possible solutions, first uncorking the waterfall that was plugged up by a strange rodent. When that fails to clear out the bay, he climbs up these hidden ancient ruins carved into the cliffs themselves to reach the tomb of ancient Noki kings. This too doesn't work, so Mario dives underwater to where the Noki people normally reside and defeats a massive eel, cleaning its teeth for some reason, which was the true source of the poison. Across these episodes, we thoroughly learn why Noki Bay is so worth protecting. Its innate beauty, its centuries to millennia of history, and its purpose as a home for Noki people today. By engaging with and exploring this space, it transforms from just another shine-collecting mission to its own world that we care about, that we want to see thrive. In the final episode, the bay is pristine once again, and Mario celebrates by collecting some coins in the well-populated underwater city he helped revive. Noki Bay is, for me, Sunshine's most poignant example of this kind of storytelling, but the game rewards curiosity similarly in other stages. Gelato Beach at first seems to be your typical white sand beach tourist trap. The missions appear to be non sequiturs, beating up random enemies and completing platforming challenges in abstract mini-levels. However, if you really take in Gelato's design and speak with the beach's residents, the true story becomes clear. The strange monument in the center is housing for the egg of the legendary sandbird, which takes 100 years to hatch, and the surrounding mirrors are incubating it. This bird has a lot of cultural significance to the town, the Piantas constantly discussing their excitement for its upcoming hatching. The second and third episodes take on a new character then, when you grasp that you are protecting this all-important egg from invading enemies, and failure would be devastating to this community. Again, you are no longer just collecting shines, you are preventing the destruction of Isle Delfino's culture. And hey, aren't those enemies basically just wigglers? You know, wigglers, the classic caterpillar enemy from the Mushroom Kingdom. So those attacks weren't random, but rather associated with Bowser himself. I am close here to diving into how all these ideas cohere over the game as a whole, and what Super Mario Sunshine ultimately communicates. But admittedly, this angle has a flaw. It depends on the assumption that the player is having any fun. In reality, Sunshine's gameplay has been heavily criticized. Not everyone connects with the game enough to even notice the little flourishes that are essential to my reading. The conversation around it instead tends to center on its obtuse design choices, its technical shortcomings, and its incompleteness in specific areas. For a full picture of this game, we do have to talk about the bad. Some personal backstory is in order. In 2004, at the age of 6, I received my very first video game console, a GameCube, of course. We played two games, Mario Kart Double Dash and Super Mario Sunshine, but we especially played Super Mario Sunshine. Dozens, maybe hundreds of hours were poured into this game, this brand new world, probably making absurdly little progress for all our effort. So Sunshine is the origin of my history with video games, period. I didn't have any of the context gained by growing up with other consoles playing other Mario games. Deep down in my brain somewhere, this game is still the Mario game. Always has been. It was a bit disorienting then, as I attempted to understand all the specific reasons this game has been so disliked, to realize that nearly every single piece of writing about Sunshine compares it to Super Mario 64 incessantly. So much of the criticism of the game is baked into comparison to its predecessor. And, to be fair, this makes perfect sense. SM64 was a revolutionary game, and there were 6 years of anticipation building for its For many, not most critics, it is impossible to separate Sunshine from those expectations. There's nothing wrong with their views that do this necessarily. What Sunshine changed, what it didn't, it all leads to interesting discussion on game design. It just doesn't land for me. I never played SM64 as a kid. I still haven't played it. Because of my personal relationship with Sunshine, my tendency is to take the game as its own unique piece of media, to take it at face value, independent from what came before or after. Under that mindset, a lot of the problems people find in the game dissolve away, or at least take on valuable meaning that is so easily missed when writing with a broader scope. Let's take a look at some of the recurring criticisms of Sunshine and offer a defense of them, not as objectively better designed, but in how they support the story the game tells. So, apparently everyone was very attached to the long jump. In SM64, your long jump is the single fastest way to get around and your best tool for clearing horizontal gaps. It returns in Galaxy and Odyssey and is probably here to stay. It's a fun mechanic, and it's not in Sunshine. The replacement is Flood's hover nozzle. In direct comparison to a long jump, it is slow and unwieldy, and also easier to use. While the game can technically be beaten without it, realistically any casual playthrough will be hovering constantly whenever there's risk of falling down. It can be used as a crutch, effectively lowering the skill floor and making the game slower, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Mario's purpose in this game is more than just going from point A to point B and killing the Goombas in his path. He's cleaning up Isle Delfino, and Flood is his method for doing that. Having the hover nozzle be your best way to cross gaps inserts Flood into the moveset, and using it constantly reinforces how Mario relates to the setting. Could they have made it more fun to use? Well, sure, it didn't have to be so clunky, but the implementation we do get has a valuable function. It links how the player moves Mario through the world with the goals and purpose of the character. Besides, if you want difficult levels where you can't rely on the hover, Sunshine has plenty of those, which are another frequent point of critique. What nearly all critics do praise about Sunshine is its sense of immersion. Isle Delfino is cohesive, it feels like a real place. Usually, many of the shines are actually collected in what are often known as secret levels, which are more focused on platforming and remove your ability to use Flood. Secret levels are accessed at a specific location in the typical stages, but are aesthetically disconnected from everything else in the game. Suddenly, Mario is traversing these abstract blocks floating in a dark, endless void. Nice acapella version of the classic Mario. Rather than these levels interrupting some nebulous feeling of immersion, I see them as a careful compromise. Mario games stand out for their tight, satisfying platforming, but it's hard to build that sort of challenge within a setting that's supposed to feel authentic. The catwalks of Rico Harbor and attractions of Peanut Park come close, but are less substantial than would be ideal. They built these levels abstractly so as to not disrupt the flow of the island, which for me is a perfectly fine solution. Besides, these weird voids are an essential part of Sunshine's aesthetic. Take them out and the game would feel less than whole in my view. But probably the most common criticism that springs from comparison to Super Mario 64 is the linearity of the game and strict requirements for reaching the finish line. In Peach's Castle, Mario had a lot of freedom in which stars had to be collected before confronting Bowser. As long as your total reaches 70, you can pick and choose which missions to complete. You can even skip entire stages if you don't like their gimmick. Sunshine, on the other hand, forces the player to collect all of the first 7 shines from each of the 7 major levels, and within each level there is one strict order you can obtain them in. King K, a YouTuber who's worked on so many different games I enjoy and have huge respect for, has a key section in his video on Sunshine that bothers me. As an example of how boring and padded the game can be, he rapid-fire walks through the experience of obtaining every shine from Bianco Hills in order.
Shine 5, Petey Piranha Strikes Back. Go to the village, shoot PD Piranha, fight a slightly altered version of the same boss, grab Shine, leave, enter. Shine 6, the secret of the Dirty Lake. Go to the windmill again, go behind the windmill, do secret area, leave, enter again. Shine 7, Shadow Mario on the loose. Chase and douse Shadow Mario with enough water, leave, enter again. Shine 8, right click, so that's where you follow. Piranha gas, explore the world surrounding the Shine, leave, enter. Get a secret shine by running all the way to the hillside secret area, and do the secret area again with Flood and a timer. Collect the 8 red coins, leave, enter. Get a secret shine in the secret area behind the windmill again. Collect the 8 red coins, leave, enter. Collect 100 coins. Get a shine. Leave.
It does sound tedious, huh? He then concludes this section with suggesting a version of Bianco Hills where all the shines are accessible simultaneously in any order without booting the player out of the level. This is more similar to SM64's level design. What this misses is how different the goals of Sunshine's locations are. In 64, the levels are mostly abstract and disconnected with minimal storytelling, but in Sunshine the levels are vibrant communities that grow and change over the course of a playthrough. Maybe King K's version of Bianco would be more viscerally fun, but it would lose that sense of progression. And, as he mentions, you can jump between the different worlds rather than marathon them one at a time. The tedium of being booted out after every shine is already broken up by periods of exploring Delfino Plaza and responding to the various crises that pop up there. The fairly linear structure of Sunshine functions to guarantee the player will interact with all the different communities that need Mario's help, and that they will observe how their work is improving the island, not immediately, but gradually. This structure is the foundation of the game's storytelling. While many of Sunshine's perceived shortcomings are, to me, inseparable from the work as a whole, even I have to admit that some others are just bad. The underutilization of the turbo nozzle and poor implementation of Yoshi, as pointed out in Matthew Matos's review, are issues I never consciously noticed myself, but I can't disagree with them. The game would be stronger if those mechanics were better. Sometimes it's that simple. And oh boy, some of those notorious levels definitely earned their notoriety. The 5th episode of Pianta Village is a secret level where Piantas just throw you from platform to platform. You have to be way too precise with your angle and positioning when initiating the throw, or you'll be unceremoniously chucked screaming into the void. This mechanic doesn't work very well, and honestly, I don't see how it would be fun or interesting even if it did. And it doesn't. I never beat the game as a kid, and while my memory is hazy, I believe this level was the roadblock. Furthermore, there is an optional secret level in the plaza where you collect red coins in a giant pachinko machine. Fun idea, completely broken. Literally, this thing does not function to the point where it's almost impossible to complete. On my recent playthrough, I died here more than the rest of the game combined, and none of those deaths were deserved. D-, see me after class. The final level, Corona Mountain, is underdeveloped and unfair. It has you steer a boat through lava with controls reminiscent of writing with your left hand while 8 beers in and also doing a handstand. Brush against any solid object even slightly and you simply perish. It's infuriating. I'm not even going to talk about the Poison Lily Pad level because I don't have footage of it because I didn't want to play it ever again. I'm not interested in or capable of defending these infamous sections. I don't think they add much value to the game artistically. But I will say that they just don't matter much to me. They are certainly annoying and frustrating in the moment, but once I get past them and back to the parts of Sunshine I do enjoy, all that frustration melts away. If I was chiefly interested in declaring good or bad, then the sections would probably stick and be more important to my overall understanding. But that's just not my angle. It is both more compelling and more natural for me to accept Super Mario Sunshine as it is, flaws and all, to look past the aspects that could have or should have been different and figure out what this game that I love says just the way it is. So here's what I see. Something Sunshine never does is position the residents of the island as the villains. They convicted Mario for a crime he did not commit, yes, but the game makes it clear that it's really all Shadow Mario's fault. The Piantas were duped and maybe acted overzealously, but that is less important than the fact that they are really suffering. As I discussed with Noki Bay and Gelato Beach, their island is being defaced, their way of life endangered. And what connects the various problems Isle Delfino faces throughout the game is that they're all coming from somewhere else. Super Mario Sunshine manages to in several different ways, depict the harmful effects the tourism industry has on its destinations. Bowser and Bowser Jr. are tourist-style Delfino, just like Mario and Peach. Bowser never even gets out of his hot tub to fight you in the final battle. His relaxation is the priority here. The damage they cause the island is, to them, incidental to their personal goals of ruining Mario's life or whatever, and it's their minions that are doing the heavy lifting anyway. Many of the towns across the island are infested with stylized versions of classic Mario enemies. Koopas are clogging up the rides of Peanut Park, Boos are haunting Serena Beach's hotel, Bloopers are making a mess of Rico Harbor. While it may not be obvious at first, these enemies are not native to Isle Delfino. After all, the first time you fight the Gooper Blooper... Okay. After all, the first time you fight the Gooper, it was trapped in a bunch of shipping containers. These creatures are being brought here are invaders from another land. Even the eel in Noki Bay is specifically mentioned to have only arrived recently. This reflects the ecologically devastating reality of invasive species in tropical tourist destinations like Hawaii or Okinawa, for example. If you think that's maybe a stretch, first let me zoom in on Peanut Park Episode 4, The Wilted Sunflowers. In the grassy beach area before entering the amusement park itself, there is a family of giant talking sunflowers. They are just the sweetest, cutest little plants, and in this episode, they are dying before your eyes. The culprit appears to be several large Yoshi eggs that are eating the flowers from underground. Onlookers are shocked that the Yoshis could be doing such harm. Now, the game has already mentioned a few times that Yoshis are native to the island, but so far they've been nowhere to be found. In reality, these enemies are a parasitic species of Koopa called, apparently, Snooze-a-Koopas. Digging them out of the sand and defeating them heals the sunflowers, who reveal that these imposters are the reason the real Yoshis are in hiding. The Koopas outcompeted the Yoshis for their specific ecological niche, which ultimately disrupted the ecosystem at large. This is the closest I've come to using my bachelor's degree in biology, by the way. Peanut Park Episode 4 is a clear-cut parallel to how invasive species harm biodiversity, specifically of tropical islands. And, lo and behold, upon return to Delfino Plaza, the real Yoshi, is my best friend, is there waiting for Mario. This allows the player to access Serena Beach, where yet another facet of Sunshine's depiction of the harms of tourism materializes. Hotel Delfino has the reputation of a world-class establishment, but in reality giving it even 2 stars on Yelp would be generous. It is dark and weird and clearly in disrepair. It is obviously a seedy place. The guests are constantly disgruntled, complaining to the manager, whose only answer is to ask Mario to fix all the problems. The problems mostly just being all the ghosts. This place is haunted, filled with booze and floor to ceiling. Eventually, you gain access to the basement, which houses a thriving casino, complete with slot machines, roulette, frustrated gamblers, and the most annoying puzzle ever created. Here, the haunting of Serena Beach takes on a different character: exploitation. King Boo, you soon defeat and remove from the hotel, came to Isle Delfino's most popular resort to establish a gambling ring, squeezing all the money he can out of the guests, who at this point are mostly just island residents, and allowing what once made the hotel great to slowly fall apart. An outside force obsessed with luxury and profit is dismantling something the island was proud of, not unlike what often happens in real life. There are lots of layers to Isle Delfino, a lot of different elements which depict the negative effects of tourism, or even colonialism in general, with more nuance than one would expect from a happy-go-lucky Mario game. Few tropical-themed locations in video games are so honest about the reality of what happens when a place people live in is treated just as a vacation. Tying all this together is the objective of the final required episode of each stage. Mario tracks down and defeats Shadow Mario in every location. This shows the player that no matter how many symptoms you solve, you still need to address the root cause, the true source of the poison. This is repetitive, yes, and perhaps born from a need to pad the game with levels that don't take much development time, but also fits perfectly into the game's core message. In the end, Super Mario Sunshine is about the responsibility of those who visit these places to treat them with respect, to appreciate their surroundings without interfering with them, and to leave them just as they were found. While Mario was initially coerced into cleaning the graffiti, he finishes the job mostly because it's just obviously the right thing to do. The policemen never supervise him like they threatened, and no one outside of the plaza seems aware that Mario is supposedly in fault. In theory, he could sneak away at any time to focus on rescuing Peach, but no, he has to make sure every last town across the country is cleared of Shadow Mario's influence. After all, Flood was created by the same weird old man who made Bowser. Mario has access to technology that makes him uniquely equipped to clean the pollution, more so than the actual victims, so it is still his responsibility to do what he can. And genuine care for and interest in Isle Delphine is rewarded in various satisfying ways. The more you explore, the more blue coins and secret shines you find, which in turn gradually unlocks new locations and upgrades, deepening your ability to engage with the setting. Accessing the rocket nozzle, for example, allows you to explore much more of Delfino Plaza, travel to Pianta Village, and finally scrub that ugly tar off the central landmark. By far, the biggest change that occurs over the course of the game is not some character arc for Mario or Peach or Bowser Jr., it's the improvement of the lives of the residents of Isle Delfino. Peach seems mostly unbothered by her predicament, and the villains learn nothing from their defeat. In contrast, the island evolves gradually but steadily from a place shrouded in darkness and filled with distraught residents whose livelihoods are being threatened at every turn to a sunny and flourishing community of joyful, dancing people. Even the two Piantas that are constantly fighting in the plaza have made up in the post-game. These two are boyfriends, in my humble opinion. I said, you see it too, right? There's a real
Excuse me?
that emerges when you give it the space to breathe, undistracted by how unbelievably bullshit Machiko Machine may or may not be. I am aware that this essay will be seen by most as reading far too much into things. 15 pages critically analyzing a Mario game is usually too many pages. Revisiting Super Mario Sunshine, I was initially unsure if I would find anything worth writing about. I thought maybe playing with a critical eye would cause the game to fall apart for me as it did for so many others. Instead, I found, to my surprise, depth and complexity what I looked for. I came to understand this game that I've played many times over on a more comprehensive level than ever before. The flaws, present and conspicuous as they may be, didn't stop me from having fun, even as an adult, and therefore didn't stop me from engaging with it from a fresh perspective, in reading in it interesting themes and messaging. Without a doubt, though, my perception of Super Mario Sunshine does remain influenced by my history with it. Playing the game is a singularly nostalgic experience for me, and I find myself totally uninterested in a version of the game that fixes its issues. It's not that I am immune to frustration or boredom. Magically looking past the problems in any given work of art is not always or usually something I'm capable of. Among video games, the indie title Owlboy comes to mind. A game with beautiful artwork and a complex story and world worth analyzing. Probably. To be honest, I don't remember much about it, as I was mostly distracted by my struggles with the gameplay. I did not vibe with Owlboy on a mechanical level, which unfortunately prevented me from truly appreciating what it did succeed at. However, I do and always will vibe with Super Mario Sunshine. You'll find me spin jumping and backflipping across Delfino Plaza when I'm 90 years old, I swear. Attempting to categorize Sunshine as a good game or a bad game and ranking it numerically or against other Mario titles are plenty suits, I suppose. There are things to be learned there, but diving into a work to see what it's saying, free from designs to correct or rearrange, is where my real interest more often resides. Objective criticism of any piece of art can be blinded by its plastic shell. Miss its golden soul.
何にするのじゃ?
Hello, this is me on camera for the first time on this channel. I hope I don't look too nervous or tired. It's been a long week. Oh, computer light reflecting my glasses. Is that cool or is it distracting? I go with this was part of my series, Reconstructed, where I take a piece of media I love and create something that is one part literary analysis. really enjoy making this, and
取引
so many
成
fun.
立じゃ
So
ん
please do like,
毎度
subscribe.
また来た
Trying to
な
make eye contact with the camera. It's like I'm asking for
な
too
んだっ
much.
け
My channel is still tiny scope of YouTube, and I have like 60 followers on Twitter, so it's hard for me to get new eyes on my channel. So if you appreciate my work, please consider sharing it around. That's really the best way to find an audience right now without getting like extremely lucky. I also have the Patreon.
朝までお
And
休みだね
if I meet my first goal, I'll make a full analysis of Final Fantasy VII. That'll be a lot of fun. I have enough things to say about the game that I've said. I think. Hopefully that's interesting to some people. I think it will be. It'll be interesting to me, at least. There's also other perks associated with the Patreon, but it's tiny right now, so we're still hashing it out. If you disagree with me, I think I said it is pretty shocking that Pokemon Black 2 and White 2 exist at all. There had never been a direct sequel to a core Pokemon game before, and there haven't been any since. They were released on the original DS more than a year and a half after the launch of the much more powerful 3DS. And to cap off this risky strategy, the set of games they were following up on were already the most controversial and least financially successful in the whole series. With Black and White 2, Game Freak doubled down. The developers insisted that yes, the new perspective on Pokemon offered by this 5th generation of games deserved further exploration, even though large portions of the fan base were not on board. Result was, in many ways, the absolute pinnacle of 2D Pokemon. And nobody played them. Well, nobody relative to the franchise's extremely high standards. 7 million is still a lot of games sold, but for Pokemon, it's actually a low point. While not without a small group of ardent supporters, Black and White 2 are these days perceived mostly as a footnote. So, now, 10 years after their release, I want to give these games their time in the sun. They have plenty of unique qualities that let them stand on their own, but I am also drawn to how they develop and complicate the ideas established in their predecessors. The specific ways they at times synergize with and at others contradict the messages of Black and White give Black and White 2 a distinct identity. Furthermore, what we learn here can tell us a lot about both the underwhelming present of the Pokemon franchise and why its potential future may be more promising than I once believed. Welcome to Reconstructed. Generations of Pokemon all had what is colloquially known as a third version. This includes Pokemon Yellow, Crystal, Emerald, and Platinum. At least a year or two after the original pair of games, they would recycle the same experience, but with more polish and a few chunks of fresh content tacked on, serving as a sort of definitive edition for each generation. For a long time, this was a cast iron mold. Generation 5 finally broken. Black and White 2 are explicitly set 2 years after the events of Black and White. Some old characters return but have recognizably matured and settled into new roles. The player character and rival are themselves brand new, something not done by the third versions of the past. This decision to write a sequel rather than a remaster has a dramatic effect. Black and White 2 are liberated from having to do the same things, say the same things as the previous games. For the first time, a Pokemon story is allowed to grow. In order to dive into why I think this choice was so valuable, I need to re-establish my thoughts on Black and White 1. To my original video, I intend for this video to stand on its own as well. These games take place in the region of Unova, based loosely on New York City and generally designed to represent the value of diversity. The most clear message presented by Black and White is that incorporating a diverse set of values into how you live is ideal, that everyone should always be considering new points of view. The antagonists are fighting for one exclusive vision of society in which Pokemon are separated from people, led at first by a character named M, who is shown to be completely sincere in his belief that catching and battling Pokemon is abusive. This is almost interesting. Ultimately, the game undercuts itself by putting M as unequivocally wrong and refusing to change any of the gameplay to better fit the plot. the story and systems of play clash. Battling with Pokemon is the only method of progression which prematurely answers the moral questions the writing pretends to raise. This, paired with the reveal that the true villain was a manipulative liar named Ghetsis who only seeks world domination, ends up communicating, to my ear, the systems we already have are perfectly fine and do not need to change. While I find this conclusion sour, it is still admirable to be ambitious and experimental when creating a Pokemon story, something that had never really been done before. It is better to bite off more than you can chew than not bite at all. A sequel is then a much-needed chance to reflect and develop those ideas. Black and White 2 does not take that opportunity lightly. It is satisfying and surprising how much self-awareness the games express regarding Black and White's shortcomings, while at the same time not being overly dependent on their successes. And that they smooth out the rougher edges that alienated some players of the first games. Pokemon from previous generations are this time mixed in with the new creatures here and there. The confusing, somber intro movie is replaced with a more conventional one. These changes do reduce the distinctiveness of the Gen 5 experience, and I personally always saw those features in a positive light, but as we'll see, the choice to make the games a little lighter and more approachable does not condemn them to being any less interesting. Another common complaint about Black and White was the strict linearity of its world design. You just go around in a semicircle like this. In contrast, the path the player takes through Black and White 2 zigzags unpredictably, slingshotting you from corner to corner in a way that was clearly designed to differentiate itself from the first games as much as possible. Even though you are nominally in the same region, Unova, of the 12 cities you visit in the main story, only 5 of them are shared with that of Black and White 1, and another 5 are entirely new. This creates an experience with the world of the game that has as different a personality as you can realistically imagine while still sharing the same path. And even the old locations have changed substantially over those 2 years. If the theme of the region in Black and White was diversity, in Black and White 2 it is growth. Everywhere you revisit has flourished in your absence. The gym leaders all have fresh new puzzle designs for their gyms. Nimbasa City has an expanded amusement park. Mistralton City has a bigger airport that now takes passengers. Undella Town now hosts a huge underwater tunnel connecting it to the new tourist destination of Gumalao City. Castelia City has, depending on the version, either extended its construction north or excavated and refurbished some ruins and, best of all, now allows access to its sewers. The most striking evolution, though, is that of Driftvale City. What was 2 years ago a modest, ambiguously working-class town is now lined with sparkling hotels, host to the prestigious Pokemon World Tournament. The Emerald Mine run by Clay, the city's gym leader, has become massively successful, driving an economic boom. This is the idealized, all-too-rare version of economic growth where the profits are actually shared among the population rather than being hoarded at the top. Overall, Unova has grown into an even better place to live. It is...
Ba. Try that. Third equal. Yes. Yes. Ooh, 30.
な。朝までお休みだね。どうするの？はい。わかりました。やったぜ！覚えたわ。記帳するぞ。